Ooh, let's have a cup of tea. Good morning and welcome to another video. So you join me today in the trusty workhorse of the channel, which is my Volkswagen Golf 2 litre TDI Blue Motion Technology GT. They need to work on that name. This, like I said, is the superhero of the channel. It does all the hard work behind the scenes. It's on 138,000 miles now. I'm trying to get it to 200,000, and once we get to 200,000, I'd love to turn it into like some crazy diesel track car or something. Part of getting it to that mileage is I look after it very well, and I have noticed as I've been walking past it recently that it has like dappled rust effect on the front right brake disc. So I'm going to take a look at that today. I'm not 100% sure what's wrong, but I'm going to take apart that assembly. So take the disc off, take the carrier off, take the caliper off, and then just make sure that everything's moving freely. I might give it a bit of a clean and make sure that the piston is kind of squeezing properly, because it looks to me as though there's not proper contact between the pad and the disc. Hopefully that'll fix it, and then I'll drive it for a bit and see if it works. So without further ado, let's get to it. Please remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon and turn all your notifications on so that you'll never miss my videos. First things first, I need to gain access to the offending caliper and disc assembly. Before I lift the corner, I'm going to loosen the wheel bolts with the weight of the car on the wheel and the handbrake on to stop it from moving. Unfortunately, I'm not strong enough here with my 1/2 inch, so I'm employing the homemade breaker bar fashioned out of some copper pipe to gain some mechanical advantage. Next, I'm going to lift the car and place it onto the axle stand and remove the remaining wheel bolts. The tyres are only a couple of months old on the front, so the wheels have come off very easily this time. Now we can see the full extent of the camo effect that my brake disc has opted to wear. To me it seems as though the sliding assembly isn't working on this face, and it's as if the caliper is stuck in the position or the piston has stopped working entirely on this caliper. First up, I remove the dust caps from the caliper slide pins and use the hex 7 to loosen these. This is where you have to remember your righty tighty lefty loosey, as the pin is facing you. Now I can remove the retaining spring, my least favourite part of this assembly. Using the screwdriver and placing it in between the pad and the piston, I can attempt to free up the piston so that I can get the caliper off. From here I can remove the caliper pins entirely and remove the caliper. On initial inspection, there isn't any uneven wear on the pads and nothing looks out of place. I think the Golf is just rebelling as it doesn't get driven anywhere near as much as it used to. Next, I tie up the caliper onto the top of the coil spring in order to take the weight off the brake hose and move the caliper out of the way whilst I try and free it up. Using the caliper wind back tool, I wind the piston as far back as I can, and you can see in this clip here how it jumps slightly. I'm not sure if it was stuck in this position or not. It didn't give a huge amount of resistance when I was winding it back in, so again, this doesn't really seem to be the problem, but a sticky caliper may be a contributing factor. At this point, I want to check the level of the brake fluid reservoir to make sure that it is still at a good level and isn't going to overflow, and it all seems good here. Next, I want to remove the caliper carrier, but for some reason I fancied taking off the brake disc retaining screw, as I thought I could get the disc off without taking the carrier off. Either way, it needed to come off, as I'm going to attempt to clean the surface of the disc. But this is kind of the wrong order to do it in. Caliper carrier bolts get their turn now, and these are relatively high torque. I have broken one of these before on my MX5, but luckily the Golf isn't quite of that vintage yet, and so the bolts still come away cleanly. Once the carrier is off, I can bring the mallet out. I replace the disc screw that I took out earlier in order to catch the disc when it breaks free, otherwise the disc is just going to hit the floor, so yeah, I definitely did that screw in the wrong order. I tried cleaning the disc up using a wire brush extension on my Ryobi with little effect. Although this clip is only a few seconds long, I tried for around 5 minutes on a small section of the disc and soon realised that nothing this side of an angle grinder would have much of an effect on this German steel. So out with the brake cleaner, and the new idea at this point is to hope that the pads will do the polishing after the assembly is put all back together. Installation is the reverse of the removal with a few torque settings thrown in. I did my caliper carrier bolts up to 190 Nm. You can see how they break easily because this is a really high torque. The pads go back in with loads of life left on them, and I'm happy that these aren't part of the problem. The caliper pins are put back in and tightened to 29 Nm. And now my least favourite step, getting the retaining springs back in. I know I make this look easy, but there was about 5 minutes of video footage to get to this point. Don't trust everything you see on the internet. Dust caps are put back into position on the slide pins, and then it's time for the wheel to go back on. I then lifted the car back up and removed the axle stand before torquing the wheel bolts to 125 Nm. This clip is taken from around 3 weeks after and about 800 miles later, and you can see how the rust is starting to lift around the edge, so I think with another 1,000 miles or so the brake discs will be back to a mirror finish. Thank you very much for watching. I'm on Instagram in between videos if you can't wait until the next one, so I hope to see you soon. Cheers.